Hello, welcome everyone to our second annual She Shreds event. And we are so happy to have you here. Thank you for your time. Hope you and yours are staying safe. My name is Natalie Welch. I'm an assistant professor here at Linfield, overseeing the sport management program. And I want to take a second to acknowledge the land that Linfield sits on. We are in McMinnville, Oregon, originally a territory of the Kalapuya Band of the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde, who were forcibly removed from this land. So I want to acknowledge and appreciate those ancestors for their land and their contributions to how we could be here today at Linfield. And thank you all virtually joining us from wherever you are. I want to thank our administration and leadership for providing speaker funds for allowing us to be able to put on this panel. And I also want to take special thanks to our panelists who are here tonight, who you're going to hear from very shortly. With that, I'm going to pass it to our moderator tonight. I'm going to actually do a little introduction. So Sima Bayat is a 25-year-old Indonesian and Persian descent and a Pacific Northwest native. She received her bachelor's in science in environmental sciences and management from Portland State University. She actually was a part of our panel last year, and I remember she was working towards that degree, so I'm really excited that she finished up and is doing amazing things. She actually got involved with Skate Like a Girl, really awesome organization in Seattle, and then transitioned to the Portland area. And she's just an amazing person. And so she's gonna really be a great moderator for us. So Sima, I'll let you take it away.
I'm gonna start crying. That was so nice. Thank you. What up, everyone? Sima, she, her pronouns. Before we dive in, I would like to formally introduce our amazing group of 5 panelists today. So we have Analise Cleopatra, visual brand manager for Velocio, artist, designer, and a cyclist. And released by REI and funded in part by Travel Oregon. The short documentary Pedal Through is Cleopatra's directorial debut. It follows her on a week-long mountain biking trip last summer through Central Oregon with her friend Dejanae Tolliver and professional mountain biker Brooklyn Bell. And then we also have Aisha McGowan. Aisha McGowan is and the first African-American professional road cyclist for Liv Racing and an advocate for better representation of people of color in cycling. Her work on diversity and inclusion in cycling inspires people to ride more and to challenge their ideas of who counts as a cyclist. Really excited to hear more about that. Next, we have Kim Woozy. Kim Woozy is an entrepreneur, community leader, and advocate in the skateboard community. She has spent the last 14 years creating brands, organizations, and events that inspire, connect, and empower girls and women, including Mafia.tv, Women's Skateboarding Alliance, Quit Your Day Job Film, The Skate Exchange, Tokyo, Squeezing the Juice podcast, and Slumber Party. In 2009, she helped advocate for California State Bill AB 467, Equal Pay for Equal Play, which was signed into law in 2020. She currently serves as the Director of Development at Skate Like a Girl of the Bay, a 501c3 community-led organization whose mission is to create an inclusive community by promoting confidence, leadership, and social justice through skateboarding. Based in the Bay Area, Kim also sits on the advisory board for the Center of Sports and Social Justice at CSU East Bay. Finding her own strength, freedom, and self-expression through action sport, she's committed to creating accessible community opportunities for everyone to participate. Then we have Norma Ibarra. She is a skateboarder, mountain biker, photographer, gardener, social media marketer, all rolled into one. Originally from Mexico, she moved to Canada in 2009 and she fell in love with British Columbia. Her fun-filled journey ultimately led her to reignite her desire to ride a skateboard at the age of 31. After moving to East Vancouver in 2015, she found the skateboarding community. Since then, Norma has carved out a prominent role in skateboarding media and is committed to documenting skaters and shedding light on lesser-known communities around the world. And then last but not least, we got Sasha Senior. Sasha Senior is the owner of Bliss Skateboard Shop, a mother of 2, a community activist, an artist, and a full-time military member. And of course, a great skateboarder. She opened Bliss Skate Shop on March 20th, 2020, a day before the province of Ontario went into lockdown due to the global pandemic. Senior has made connections from many different countries, Jamaica, Uganda, and South Africa, to name a few. She's honorably mentioned on the thank you list by Alfonso Rawls and is the first Black woman to open a skateboard shop in Canada and maybe the first Black woman to open a skateboard shop in all North America. We'll fact check that. I got you, Sasha. So thank you all for joining me tonight, and I'm so excited to hear from all of you. So since we're virtual, I will just direct questions to you, and also feel free if we get into a conversation to kind of be like, yeah, I hear you, that sounds great, and kind of popcorn off each other as well. But just to get to know y'all a little bit better, I would love to hear from all of y'all of where you grew up and how your initial involvement was in sports. So like sport in general. So maybe you started off as a soccer player, then became a skateboarder. Who knows? Would love to hear that. So I'll start with Sasha. Sasha, tell us a little bit about where you grew up and your initial involvement in sport.
So I'm originally from Brampton, Ontario, which is it's a smaller suburban city just outside of Toronto. So I know a lot of people know about Toronto, so that's a good map reference there. I actually grew up playing basketball. I have two older brothers. I have four uncles, and so for the longest time, I was the only girl in the family. For about 10 years, I was the only girl in the family. So I was around, video games, sports, flag football, basketball, every single sport besides skateboarding. So one day we ended up moving out into the county area, and I seen these kids down the street. And now, mind you, this city is really small. There's probably about two main streets and then maybe about 3 or 4 streets with houses on it. The community's tiny. Everybody knows each other. And it's mostly a white area. And so I'm looking down the street and I see these kids skateboarding. And I'm like, oh, that looks pretty fun. And I'm about 12 years old, almost 13. I said, I want to make some friends. So I ended up borrowing one of my friend's skateboards from my hometown in Brampton, and I started skateboarding with these kids. And it was pretty much from there that I kind of fell in love with it. And we would go around the city, around the town, and we would skateboard at different spots. But most of the time it was just on the driveway because they had such a long driveway. You could fit maybe like 10 or 15 cars on it. So the driveway ended up being like a mini skate park. So we would always skate the driveway. And that's how I started skateboarding.
That's awesome. That whole small town, like you just randomly see skateboarding and you're like, and all you need is a board and flat ground, right? Like somewhat flat ground, depending how vicious you are. That's awesome, Sasha. Thank you so much. I'll pass the same question off to Norma. Norma, tell us a little bit about where you grew up and your initial involvement in sport in general.
Hi, everybody. Well, I grew up in Hermosillo, Sonora, which is northern Mexico, really close to the border with Arizona. And I wasn't really a sport girl at all. And I guess I was raised by my grandma, I didn't have a lot of kids to play with when I was young. I was exposed to skateboarding at a young age, but it's kind of wasn't it felt like it wasn't for me at that time. In Mexico, there was no skate shop, there was no other people like me skateboarding. So it was not until I moved to Canada that I became my active journey, because I guess British Columbia is a very active place. There's mountain biking, there's skateboarding, there's kayaking, rock climbing, a lot of things. And I got really inspired by that. So I started mountain biking first, and then I somehow ended up living close to Antisocial Skateboard Shop when I was 31. And that's when I started skating, and everything changed. Like skateboarding took over my life, and now I'm like a skateboard photographer. So.
We hear that a lot. Skating just kind of takes over, right? That's awesome. So you're kind of touching on how when your environment changed, you're like, whoa, these opportunities around me has changed as well. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Norma. Pass on the same question to Ayesha. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and your initial involvement in sport.
Okay. I grew up in Piscataway, New Jersey. I moved there when I was 5. I was born actually here in Georgia. I lived in this house before I moved to New Jersey. And so I split my school year I was in New Jersey, and the summers I spent with my grandparents. And I feel like I don't remember a time where I wasn't doing something. There's not a whole lot going on around my grandparents' house. So there I was just kind of following them around. But I do specifically remember being there summer of '96 when the Olympics came through Atlanta, and my aunt and uncle took me to watch the torch run past, and I would watch the Olympics on TV. And one day I was going to be a gymnast, and the next I was going to run track. And I've just always been really easily inspired by the things I see. And I think that was the year that Dominique Dawes was like really crushing it. So it was just a really amazing thing to witness. But back home in New Jersey, I was running track and playing basketball and riding bikes with my friends. But the thing that really stuck was field hockey in middle school. And I played field hockey from, I think, 6th grade all the way through 12th grade. And when it came time for college, there just wasn't, it didn't line up with the academics that I wanted to do. So I pretty much abandoned it at that point, and then somehow ended up riding bikes and pursuing that competitively. But I feel like I've always been super active and kind of just occupying myself, moving around in some way.
Yeah, that's awesome. It seems like everyone's journey to some sort of action sport is never just the same or linear, because it's such, our industry and action sport in general is so unique, right? So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing. I'll pass on the same question to Analise. Tell us a little bit where you grew up and your initial involvement in sport.
Cool, thank you. So I grew up in Miami, Florida, and my first involvement in sport was my dad put us all in Tang Soo Do. And so I did that from elementary school. And then I went to art school, and I had to choose between art and sport. And then after I left college and moved to Portland, I joined a women's football team. And it was an amazing time in my life.
That's so cool. How long did you live in Portland for?
Oh, I lived in Portland for like 6 or 7 years. But I was with the Portland Shockwave, and it was an all women's full tackle, fully clothed football team.
So
People
cool.
always ask, so I feel like
you have to reveal.
Right? Have it.
Just another, roadblock in the things in the environment that we're in. It's okay. We'll get more into that in a little bit. All right, last but not least, Kim Woozy. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and your initial involvement in sport.
What's up, everyone? Yes, I grew up in the Bay Area, where I'm at now, in a suburb called Fremont. It's about an hour outside of San Francisco. And I have one brother, and so I pretty much just did everything he did. And I'm so grateful that my parents didn't control or tell me that I couldn't. So I played like Little League, soccer, basketball. I've played so many different sports. I'm definitely like Jill of all trades. Like I'm decent at everything, but I'm not super good at anything, including skateboarding. But yeah, luckily I think similar influences, like the 96 Olympics, the US women's national soccer team winning the World Cup, the launch of the WNBA. Like I had all these amazing role models in mainstream media growing up. And that definitely informed a lot of like my career and my life. I snowboarded as a kid, just like had the privilege and resources to be able to go up to Tahoe like once a year to ski with my family. And I definitely latched on to snowboarding. As soon as I tried it, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And continued like pursuing board sports, because I don't know, there was something about riding boards that was different than soccer or basketball. And that's kind of what stuck with me throughout sort of my college years and beyond. So fast forward, I ended up working in the skate industry at the end of college and then sticking with it. And I actually didn't learn to skate like more progressively until I started volunteering with Skate Like a Girl, because even though I was behind the scenes in the industry, I still felt like there wasn't really an invite or space for me to personally participate. So super grateful for our organization.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. That's awesome. It seems like everyone has had like different influences of what they were able to see back in the day. That seems like we're not that, none of us are that old. So when I say that language, I don't mean it in a bad way, but it's going to be interesting and later in our conversation to look at media now and see if that's why there's more participation per se. But I know we all touched on a little bit of what action sport that we're in. And I do kind of want to go into it a little bit more just individually. So some of you have already kind of touched on how you got involved with your action sport personally, but I think it'd be great to hear about how the professional side of it as well, you came into it. So I'll do another popcorn around just so we can get to know everyone a little bit better. And then the question after that will be a little more of a popcorn just between all of us. But I will just go in the same order. Sasha, what is, just stay one more time with the action sport that you're involved in with, and then how did you find yourself in it professionally? So how did Bliss Skate Shop kind of come into fruition? Love to hear that.
So I'm a skateboarder. I love skateboarding because it's a you versus you sport, and so that's just why I like it, because I challenge myself. How did Bliss come to be Bliss? I really had the opportunity presented to me because it was just an idea on paper that I was kind of talking about with my friend, one of my good friends from Jamaica, and I started looking. I said, let me see how much it's going to cost to run a business. And let me look at office spaces or, storefront spaces, how much they're going to cost. This storefront came up. I said, wow, that's really affordable. And then besides that, I said, I'm kind of bored on the weekends because I have 2 kids. I'm a mother, right? And on the weekends, my sons usually go to visit their father. And after my skate session, so I'm in Windsor, Ontario, which is south of Detroit. So I go across the border, drop them off, skate Riverside Skate Park. And that's on a Friday. Then Saturday, Sunday, I have nothing else to do. I said, my weekends are kind of free. I think I could run a skate shop on the weekend. And so the opportunity presented itself to me because, like I said, the space was affordable. I said, all right, cool. So I ended up getting the spot, and I'm standing in the middle of the skate shop after I, signed the lease and everything. And I said, well, I guess I own a skate shop now. Didn't have any business license, didn't know how to buy products, didn't know how to get distributors. None of that stuff. I just knew that I was a skateboarder. I'm like, I'm a skateboarder. I can sell products. I put the cart before the horse, and now this is Bliss. So that's how it came to be.
I love that. Just like, I own a skate shop now. And I love that, train of thought and that notion, because I think that is so true to skateboarders in general too. It's just like, I'll just do it. Let's go. And I love also your train of thought. Like, I got 2 days out of the week that I'm not already being a superstar mom and doing all these other things. I'm just going to have a shop. But I love that. And I think that's great. And I think that's a really great image. And, you can really do it all if you just put your mind to it. That's awesome. Thank you, Sasha. Norma. Yeah. So what is the action sport that you're involved with? And how did you find yourself professionally involved in that too? Because I know you've been, I see your name in magazines. I'm like, oh, I know that.
Well, I always been in love with photography. When I was 15 years old, my mom gifted me her camera. It was a film camera, but I was always kind of like, didn't really have a niche until I started skateboarding, but it all came together. Like, I was always drawn to action sports. As I said, when I moved to Canada, I was working as a nanny, and then I had a Canadian family they were my mentors, and they used to live in North Vancouver, which is like well known as the mecca of mountain biking. And I was like, what is the people my age? I want to meet people my age. I'm new to this country, and I took a course and I tried to learn how to mountain bike, and I really love it. And then I started volunteering at mountain biking events. So that was my first exposure to action sports photography. I got to work with mountain biking, but eventually I always wanted to try skateboarding. And as I started skateboarding, it was kind of the end of everything else. And I noticed that I found a group online, and I started skateboarding with other women here in Vancouver. And I noticed no one was really documenting my community, and I was already a photographer. So for me, it was not a brainer to document it. And it was kind of like a transition period where skateboarding kind of was very like, there wasn't any recognition for women. And then when I started, like a few years later, it was kind of like social media, everything started booming, and I got to follow women who were really good, and like it was kind of all tied together. Like, I started volunteering with Skate Like a Girl, because what happened was that women started to create their own magazines, their own events, their own brands. So like, I was in the middle of it all, and I met Kim Woozy, I met Chris and Evelyn, which really good mentors in the community, and it was one of those things, like they were like, Norma is always taking photos, like Norma, do you have any photos? And people started asking for photos, and I started kind of submitting my photos to like small zines. And I guess eventually, you know, like as I learned how to skate, I learned how to shoot, I learned the trick names, the timing, because you know, it was like a crazy learning curve. But I was really lucky, and I'm grateful that I had mentors who were like, Norma, you should try to get your work published and stuff. Obviously, it came with a lot of challenges, but able to have an outlet that was kind of like within my community, you know, say like women events, women's scenes, and slowly kind of everything kind of snowball, and it's been growing. Obviously, it's not where it should be, I think, but it's, you know, there's been a lot of, and then there's a lot of amazing things going on, and I just really got really passionate about it, and I've been trying to go back home to Mexico to document there and focusing on women and non-traditional skaters, the queer community, you know. And it started in Vancouver, but as time went on, like I was like, oh, I want to go here, I want to go there. And thankfully, and with the privilege, like I have a couple of friends who have helped me, like I've been able to go to Cuba, to India, to document the skateboarding scene there. So yeah, it's been a very interesting journey, and I love it.
That's awesome, Norma. It just seems like you can really take your passions into something more if you just kind of put yourself out there a little bit, right? Same question to Aisha. Restate the action sport that you're involved with, and then how did you find yourself there? Maybe we can touch a little bit more on personally and then professionally.
I am in the sport of road cycling. Professionally, the other cycling I do for fun. Definitely not a pro in any of the other ones, but I started as a commuter in college. I think similar to what Analise was saying, when I graduated from high school, like I had to choose field hockey or music school, because all of the options that I had did not have great programs for both. And so inevitably I ended up in music school and eventually transferred to Berklee College of Music in Boston. And the train system there is not the best, the transportation system. And so my friend suggested that I get a bike, and I did. And so I started commuting, and I just was trying to save money. I was being cheap and I was being lazy. I could stay in bed a little longer and not have to wait for the train. And somehow it turned into this whole thing where I was now like a part of this vast community of people who like to ride bikes. It like expanded my people network. It expanded my like geographical network. I was able to go places and like actually understand how to get around Boston, which is super confusing. And I just met all of these really amazing people at a local bike shop. They had an adult instructor training program. So basically I was being cheap again, and I was like, oh, they'll teach me how to repair my bike and I don't have to pay someone else to do it. And in exchange, we would teach youth how to build bikes. And so through that program, I met a ton of really amazing people. And that's where I really got my roots in advocacy and learned not just about how to like work with youth, but how to work with humans in general. And then I moved to New York City, and before I moved, I was a bike messenger for a very short period of time. I was terrible at it. I do not want to be out in the rain if I don't have to. It is a very hard job. I think everybody should respect anybody who's ever done it. But then I moved to New York City, and I was just doing like alley cats and gold sprints and like just kind of being a pixie kid and romping around. But I didn't have any thoughts of being a like serious competitor in anything. I was just having a good time. And eventually my friends decided that they wanted to start racing, and there were a few racing clinics at the track in Queens, which is the Casino Velodrome. And I just started participating as part of We Bike NYC, which is a women's empowerment group that is now a nonprofit in New York City. They had just started at the time. And so the thing about Casino is that it's not near anything, so it's really hard to get to, but they put together a ride to the velodrome, and that was always the barrier of like, how are you going to get there? It's like, I am navigationally ridiculously challenged. Like I could get lost anywhere, but they led us there, and like we did the clinic, and it was super fun. And that kind of planted the seed. And eventually when my friends decided they wanted to race bikes, I decided to do it with them because the Red Hook Crit, which is a fixed gear criterium, which is not the smartest thing in the world to do, but still safer than alley cats, if you ask me. They were starting a women's field. And so I was super into women's advocacy, especially when it came to cycling. And so I was like, well, racing seems like a fun thing to do, so I'm going to do it because it's for women. And so I'd already been training for this track crit. And so people were like, why don't you try road bikes? I think bike people are kind of like always pushing you to the next thing. And so I tried road bikes and I was like, oh, I can coast and I can go really fast and this is awesome. And so I was just super into it. And so while I was training for fixed gear crits, I was also training for road racing and did a road clinic and a track clinic and all the clinics I could find. And I just got hooked on all of it. And the reason I think I gravitated towards road is because of the opportunities that were available to me. With the velodrome in Casina, it was racing the same like 5 women every week, and there wasn't really a lot of variety, but it was super fun. So I just kept going. But with road cycling, there were races every weekend, twice a week. So I had a lot more opportunity to race, a lot more opportunity to progress, and I just happened to be really good at it. And so that was also really nice. You know, being good at something feels really great. And then when I went looking for like somebody Black or brown, because that's what I do, I've discovered that there hadn't been any African-American women who were at the top of the sport. And I thought that was wild because it was 2014 at the time. And so little me decided that I was going to do it and just declared that I was going to be a professional road cyclist. No idea what that meant. No idea what that path looked like. Still kind of don't know, even though I've done it. But I figured it out somehow. It took a while and it was very, very challenging. And I had a lot of help along the way. But it was a matter of kind of forging my own path because there wasn't one already in existence. And so that is how I got here.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it seems like you started kind of finding yourself in a really dope community, and then you're like, and within that community, you're like, well, I don't see myself, and I want to see more of like maybe myself, and so you're gonna barge that other community or like try to create one. And so definitely action sports are very community focused, and you know, I'm hearing a lot of those themes, just really cool, and it's something to keep in mind. Analise, same question. What is action sport that you're involved in, and then how did you find yourself there professionally?
Okay, cool. So the action sport for me is biking, I guess mountain biking, but I'm not professionally anywhere near as far as riding. But I work at Velocio now. I started when I moved to Portland. I worked for a design agency. I wanted to work for Adidas because in my mind, which brand gets the most attention of young Black children? And at the time I read that as Adidas. So I wanted to work for Adidas so that I could have like a part of that. And, you know, because when they just do whatever they want to do, it's crazy. I went to Pencil and learned how to be a color and materials designer. From there, it was a filmed session. So I interrogated a lot of the crew to understand how everything worked together on set. And that's what got me interested in film. And so then I switched again, and I did some challenges in Portland. I did the Northwest Filmmakers Film Festival Kodak 50-foot challenge. And we shot on a Super 8 in black and white, and it was super fun. You had to edit in camera, so I had to like create a story out of like just my friends who were available that day. And it was really fun, and I really enjoyed directing and playing with the images. One of my friends who was in it, I got to use his music for the film, and so that felt good too, because it's like, oh, if I get access to these tools, then I can put my friends on. And there was a really dope Black artist community in Portland. which took me a long time to find. But when I did, it felt really wonderful. And those are some of the most brilliant people that, yeah. Okay, and then so at the time I had worked with Ali doing some voice acting. She saw the grant and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that, but I'm gonna do my best. And so we did the film and I learned a lot from her as a filmmaker and I learned a lot about myself on the trip. And then after it came out, I started connecting with other women who bike and I applied and now I work for Velocio and I do, I am the visual brand manager. So I contribute to the styling and the stuff that we put out visually in the marketing. And I really enjoy it because I never did work for Adidas, but I don't think I would have thrived in that environment because when you're in a big company like that, it's like, they only want you to do one thing. And I don't thrive anywhere where you need me to do only one thing. So Velocio gives me a lot of space to try things and learn and like, I'm gonna finish up, I promise. Sorry. I really fuck with the way that they interact with the environment and make an effort to just like address our impact. And I like the opportunities that come with trying to share those stories and also explore and share cycling and represent cycling with people in my community to the world.
Yes, we love that. Yo, that was great, Analise. I heard a lot of like what's really cool about your story too, and it actually sheds light on like most of our panelists is that our action sport is not just us getting on our board or getting on our bike. It's like there's a lot more to it. You can be really multidimensional. And what I'm hearing too is you can build your team and bring your team with you in this action sport, which is I think one of my favorite parts about action sport, not to down traditional sport, but just like when you're traditional sports, sometimes you're kind of just put on a team and you need to work. But in action sport, you're like, I got my friend Norma, who's a photographer. I got my friend Emily, who knows how to do film. Yo, Sasha has a shop. What up? Like Kim knows how to market. And then, yo, we got Ayesha over here. She can like talk to people and make sure my shit is being inclusive. So you can like really build your team in action sport, which I think is sick. So thank you, Analise. Kim, how about what action sport you're involved in a lot? How did you find yourself professionally? So I know you kind of touched on that a little bit in your initial introduction, but how did you find yourself kind of where you are now? Because you were juggling 3 oranges and an apple.
I can actually juggle. So in real life.
She can juggle,
by the way, I like that superstar team. Can we make that happen? Yeah, so for me, just actually in college, I landed an internship at Osiris Shoes. For those of you who are 90s skaters, you may remember the brand. It's no longer in existence. But I think for a lot of it was just whenever an opportunity presented itself, I just said yes, even if I had no idea what I was doing. So similar to Sasha, it's just like, all right, let's just make it happen. And a lot of my career also looking back has been like, this isn't happening. This should be happening. Like, let me try to figure out how to make it happen, like with my friends, right? So at Osiris, same thing, showed up. They were making like pink skate shoes and flowing a few girls, but like didn't have any pro riders on the team, definitely not paying anyone, which I thought was messed up, using models for ads. And I'm like, dude, why are we using models off Craigslist? We should be like featuring these awesome skaters that I'm meeting, right? So yeah, just found kind of a place to like advocate because I came from team sports. Like we're not only here to knock team sports, like shout out to team sports. I came from a place where there was a whole crew of women working together, right? Making things happen and like women in every role. And I was thinking like that needs to happen in the action sports industry, in the board sports industry, like surf, skate, snow. It was like model. And then like, if you can skate, cool, like here's some shoes, like go away, right? Like, so definitely utilizing like those opportunities to be able to elevate girls and women, and then getting to meet at the time some Groms who are now like the top, you know, skaters, Olympic potentials, Leticia, Alicia, Lizzie, and just being able to be like, yo, the whole world needs to like know about these people, right? So at every turn of the way, I kind of pivoted. So got my start at Osiris. When I left there, I was ended up being the girls team manager, and they didn't even have a girls team when I started. And I just really pushed for it. And again, got creative, like, fine, we don't have a budget. Great. How else can we like figure out how to add value, right, to these skaters? And then after that, like when I left Osiris, it was like, what's missing? Media. Like this was pre-Instagram, pre-YouTube. And it was like, it's not easy to find a video of a girl skating. So reached out to my buddy from college. We started our own production company, started making internet videos, met a lot of cool folks along the way, including Norma. And fast forward, like Instagram blew up, so great, like self-publishing platform, you know, phone cameras, GoPros, whatever. And it was kind of like, cool, what we're doing is not really needed as much anymore. Like what else is missing, right? And so at every step of the point, just looking at what else was missing. So just a quick summary, like at one point, there wasn't competition happening at the pro level. I was part of the group alongside Mimi Noop and Lisa Whitaker and Eileen Oliver that helped bring the women's division to Street League for the first time. And that kind of just opened up a lot of doors. The Olympics announcement obviously was huge. So helping the pros really get to a point where they could actually make a living. Like really early on, Alicia, Lee, and Lizzie Armanto were like my little sisters. So I'd like drive them around, and then like Lizzie blew up. She like got on Birdhouse, and like so happy for her. And so like after that kind of was taken off, I was like, all right, what else is missing now? And it boiled back to just participation. Like I moved back to the Bay Area, and I was like, all I ever wanted when I lived here was to like meet up with people to skate and like make friends. And that still wasn't possible as like a woman. And then knowing that Skate Like a Girl existed, just being like, we got to bring Skate Like a Girl to the Bay Area legitimately. So taking that on. So yeah, just every step of the way being like, what's missing, what's needed, like, how can I be a team player here? How can I connect some dots and make it happen? So that's kind of like a brief history of like my professional relationship to skateboarding.
That's awesome, Kim. Thank you. I'm hearing a lot of obviously very similar themes, and I think everyone in our panel saw a need. So we're talking about equity here, right? They saw a need in their community, in their sport, and was like, what can I do to fill in that gap? And so I think that's why y'all are here. That's why y'all are so amazing and superstars. So yeah, I second Kim. Can we get this team together tomorrow? And before I move on to the next question, I want to do a really quick shout out to Claire Bouchard from our She Shreds 1 event from last year. And she says, hello, beautiful, rad woman. So what up, Claire? Thank you for the shout out. We love you. All right. So next question is not going to be directed to anyone in general. Specifically, it's for all our 5 panelists. So I guess you can just kind of popcorn off each other and answer this. Whoever wants to go first can. But so gender, race, and ethnicity, there is an intersectional notion to those 3 things, and even more. So it's not just those 3 things. It's kind of like a lot deeper than that. What has your experience in action sport been like in regards to those in combination, or even those individually? So kind of, you know, we're all our panelists have a different background and themselves are different. So yeah, if anyone wants to answer that question first. So what has your experience in action sport been in regards to gender, race, or ethnicity?
I guess I will try.
Yeah, go for it.
I think I found like the bike community and the cycling industry and the sport of like competitive cycling kind of right at the progression of them trying to convince people that women were awesome. So there was like a push for like not pink it and shrink it, and like getting more women into the sport, getting more women on bikes, and like showing that they were capable. But I think it was also kind of another, at least in my eyes, another example of people zeroing in on like white women specifically and leaving out anybody else. And I don't know that it was intentional. It was just that the people with that kind of power and the people that were doing these initiatives were mostly white women. And so that's who they were thinking about. And so I guess for me, I've been, I've always made a point of kind of trying to champion specifically for Black women and women of color, because it felt like no one else was doing it at first. Or the people who were doing it did not have enough of a platform that anybody cared to listen. So like even at the very beginning, I felt like they had these like applications, people were looking for more women ambassadors or like whatever it was. And so I would apply and I would make a video, but I was always very like, I'm an African-American woman, that's super important to me. And it would always end up being crickets every single time. And so eventually I was just like, you know what, forget these people, forget these companies. I'm just gonna build my own thing. And I will just yell into the void if nobody wants to listen, but I'm going to say the things that I want to say. And so I feel like things aren't great now, but they're definitely better. We're able to have more conversations, and there are definitely a lot more people in the space who have a platform and who've been like building a platform and have a voice in this industry, whereas before I feel like all those people were being drowned out. So I think that's, I guess, the positive thing that's happening in the cycling industry, but there's still a long way to go.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Anybody else want to share their experience with those things in their sport?
I'll share mine. For me, growing up, I always felt like I was somewhat of an outsider, especially because with skateboarding, it's a white male dominant sport. It's definitely become more multicultural. And just to digress a minute, Kim, I'm so upset that I didn't know you when I went to go visit San Francisco. Next time I'm over there, we gotta hook up. Anyways, so I just wanted to make sure I said that. But yeah, it's a white male dominant sport. So when I'm younger, when I was 13 years old, these guys that we're skating with were white guys. And then even when I went into high school, it was still mostly white males that I was skateboarding with. And I always felt a sense of I didn't belong with them, but they allowed me to skate with them anyways to a certain extent. And there's a couple times where I skated with other people and they would ditch me, so they would leave, just abruptly or whatever. And I always felt a different way because I'm a Black woman on a skateboard. So that in itself was like, okay, first of all, you're Black. Secondly, you're a woman, and thirdly, you're riding a skateboard. And I even got some shade thrown at me from other Black people in my high school. They would say things like, "Oh, you're whitewashed, and why don't you go hang out with your skater friend?" These are from other Black people. You know what I mean? And so, and for me, it was at the point where if being in Brampton, if someone said, "Oh, that Black skater girl," that was most likely me, because I was pretty much the only one. And I'm sure there's a lot of other Black women who skate now who could probably say the exact same thing, that they were, or even just other women that skate that can say, every time I went to the skate park, I was the only female there. And so I'm just happy that I never let that really get to me, because I wouldn't be where I am now. And I'm even more happy that, as Kim said, with Instagram and social media and the ability to be able to put yourself out there, I can see that back then, even though it felt like it was just me, it wasn't. There was other females who were skateboarding at the park by themselves, or they were the only woman with a whole crew of guys skateboarding. And it's so cool to see that they also didn't quit. And I'm glad that I can be in the position that I am now, didn't give up, didn't listen to the negative things that people were saying to me, pushed through that. And I can be an inspiration to other women that skateboard, other women who look like me that skate, and just people in general around the world. So it's pretty dope. And if you're ever in a position like that, and it's something that you like to do and you're passionate about it, don't let the negativity from other people discourage you from doing what you're doing.
Snaps to that, Sasha. Thank you, both Sasha and Aisha, for sharing your experience. It just seems like sometimes in the world in general, and then mostly and also in action sports, there's like conditional inclusivity. So it's like, we'll include you to a certain extent, instead of just being like, yeah, you can have everything. And it's like, you're like, why not? Why can't I have everything? Like, what in your mental and what in your industry, like what, like, right? It's different now, but it's not all the way there. But still in 2021, for it not to be all the way there is kind of also ridiculous. But that's why there's people like y'all who are, you know, paving the way unapologetically, which is, you know, we got to thank each other and be really stoked on that and look at the positive notes that there are people doing stuff, which is really rad. Is there anyone else that wants to kind of share their experience? Norma?
Yeah, well, it's, you know, I think there's been a lot of challenge, as Sasha was saying, with skateboarding, white male dominated world. I guess for us women, we were not seeing ourselves on skateboarding media. So the way things started, it was like, people were like, well, I'm not in this magazine. When I started shooting, I would submit photos to skateboarding media and my photos were denied, and I was getting no. And my goal, obviously, as a photographer, you want to get your work published and print. That's kind of the goal of every photographer. I think, like, you want to see your pictures tangible on print. And I was shooting photos of all my friends who are really good skaters, but the photos were not being accepted. So I couldn't take the credit all by myself. Like, so people like Kristen Eveling and Shari White, they started a zine called the Skate Witches because they didn't see themselves too in the magazine. So you will look at the biggest magazines of skateboarding and you still do. And when you look at them, there's barely any woman, and like, you know, like woman on the cover, or when you look at the magazine, there's no women in it, or yeah, people of color as well. And it's like, it's been so many years already, and we talk about this over and over and over, and then media still lacks the representation that we all need, and when it comes to diversity. So the word that I've been pushing is that, like, with my work, I want other women to see themselves in the magazine. So like, we still have to kind of do a lot of work, and there's been a lot of people pushing for this, including Kim, and as I said, Skate Wishes. There's other new outlets now for non-traditional, you know, skateboarders that are focusing on diversity, like Skatism. There's other magazines, Quell, that focuses on women. So in my situation, it took a long time for me to be able to get gigs, you know, or people will be like, oh, I got kicked out of events just because I was a woman, or because maybe I wasn't such a good skater, but I was shooting. Like, I'm a photographer, I can get a photo of skaters, but I got kicked out of events. Or people were like trying to get my photos, like even brands, and say, oh, do we need to pay her? And is it just because I'm a woman? Like, obviously my work matters, but it's taking a lot of education, a lot of work, a lot of collaboration. So thankfully, we have a really strong community, I would say, in the women queer community. We have all united and have created our own outlets that now brands are like, oh, with social media, everything boomed, and now brands are like, oh yeah, women skate. Oh, you wanna help us, but still in those marketing roles, I think we also have to push for diversity so that brands and events organizers are doing the work that pushes for diversity and equality, equity. Because when it comes to like contests too, like women weren't getting paid the same amount of men. So like, it's a lot of work and it's been a lot of challenges, and I'm super passionate about it. And my goal with shooting women is that to push for that, so that in the future, you know, when a girl looks at a magazine, be like, oh, I can do this. Because when I was young, I didn't see that. And I felt like, oh, this is not for me. Or my family was like, this is not for you, you know, like, so my goal right now is that, so that, you know, when you look at the magazine, the skateboarding magazine, there's people of color, queer skaters, women, and it's just not just white male in it. So, you know, we're seeing some wins, we're seeing some evolution, but as everyone else probably thinks, it's like there's a lot more to do, and there's a lot more to teach and learn. But I'm excited for the future.
Yeah, and there's no excuses anymore too, because maybe you want to say 40 years ago there weren't that many people that were of different, you know, images in these action sports, but it's on paper. There's facts that their participation has gone up. So in all sports, in action sports, so there's no excuses for no representation. Kim, I know you had something to say as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly share like more of my personal experience with race specifically, because it's something that I'm even discovering in the past year. Looking back just at my childhood and my experiences, like really getting that I personally was attracted towards sports and then ultimately action sports because there was like internalized xenophobia. So I grew up in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, lots of immigrants from Asia, from China, Taiwan, India. And there was, in terms of like folks of color, you know, from Asia, like there was a lot of that in my environment, in my neighborhood. But now understanding that sort of this hierarchy of power around xenophobia, and really those of us who are born here, like I'm Asian American, I was born here, kind of wanting to distance ourselves from folks who are newer to the country, right? And really understanding my own kind of childhood want to fit in and to be like the people I saw in the magazines and on TV, and ultimately like wanting to be white and not associated with, you know, the term back in the day was like fresh off the boat, which is funny now because it's a TV show. But that was like a negative connotation. And then understanding my own kind of relationship in the system of white supremacy and getting that like growing up, there was so much of that messaging of like white and blonde is good, like white blonde surfer girls, like Blue Crush, right? And aspiring towards that. And like just really having this like awakening moment of like, oh, wow, like that's kind of gnarly and a little bit embarrassing, but really now just owning that and being like, okay, like we are inside of this system and the whole industry is obviously inside of that system too. But now that we are aware, there's a chance to transform it, and not being, you know, feeling shame around that necessarily, but being like, cool, I am an Asian woman as a leader in this industry that has historically been dominated by white men. Like, what can I do about that now in my position, in my platforms? And that's been really cool to see because as Sasha was pointing to, like skateboarding in the past, I would say even 2-3 years has really opened up to just such a beautiful, diverse participation and such an increase in people seeing themselves and wanting to try it, because it is literally for everyone. It's a piece of wood with 4 wheels that you can do anywhere, like as long as there's pavement, I guess. So that's been really cool. And just, yeah, trying to like understand myself better in this system, in this industry, in this community, and then of course, like in America and the world.
Yeah, definitely. Representation matters. Analise, did you have anything to add to that as well?
Yeah, I can talk about, so my first experience is pretty much the film, and it was a grant that the Oregon Main Grant was looking for people of color. Like it wasn't only open to people of color, but they made a point to try and get it in front of audiences. And so working with a white woman on that project who, it was going to be me, Allie, and Meredith, another filmmaker. And it evolved to becoming me, Day, and Brooklyn. And that was a really important thing to me because, you know, just showing different levels of familiarity with the bike and different relationships with the industry. And from there, coming to Miami, where the bike culture is just so different. And I actually came back, I got to work with a friend on a documentary during Martin Luther King Day down here. The bikers kind of are all over the street. And we were able to film some. So it was just like, I came back and I'm on my mountain bike, but there's a pack and they look at me and then they're like, all right, because I have the camera. And like trying to keep up with these kids like popping wheelies in the street and thinking about like the videos that I see on the internet of people like sending it and going on hills and stuff, but like looking at this graceful like bike ballet is like, it felt amazing until I was like, these are all my sons. like, because they're, you know, they're young kids, like, I don't know. But it felt really cool to like watch them in the glory and like see the crazy range of motion they have on the bike with the pegs. Everything was beautiful. And then from there are different like bike group rides down here. And it was such an amazing experience to bike with like a bunch of Black people behind a truck. Like the truck plays music, but you bike like 30 miles around the city. And I don't know if you've ever been to Carnival, like the being in sync with a bunch of different people at the same time, listening to music and riding a bike feels amazing. I just felt, it feels like a real community connection that's really special. And, you know, people are always encouraging. My sister bikes now, which is crazy, you know, going from someone who never heard of REI, like, and now is out there more than me. So anyway, so I guess that's speaking about the contrast of the experience, but then like from the professional perspective, like wanting to showcase more range and getting the opportunity to do that is really exciting. And also learning, like I had to learn so much. It's like, you know, you step into a world and it's just like, oh, everything's going on at one time. And I really appreciate all the different perspectives and history of like kind of what I've come into.
You're part of that history now, for sure. There's like such a power of storytelling and creating platform to share varying experiences of athletes from different backgrounds, you know, because media rules our world. And it just seems like common themes I keep hearing, which I love, is community and being able to see like, so what's it called? Being able to see ourselves and other people. I think it just really comes that simple to those things as humans for our own self-worth in our day-to-day lives, is like, I saw one person that kind of looked like me I can relate to. It's like that relatedness, that community, that everything. Ooh, I love it. I love hearing it. Thank you for sharing your own stories. We're kind of going into the industry side of things a little bit too. And there are a lot of obvious gaps in many of our industries individually together. And I know there's always like this loaded question is like, what do you think companies should do? And I honestly don't want to ask that question again, just because I think we've all been asked that question before and we've been given our answers and maybe have not been heard, you know, or put our time into giving answers and they're just kind of fall to the wayside. So my question for y'all, and it might take like a minute to think about, is do any of you have any examples from a company or companies who seem to be truly forward moving and try to fill in those gaps? So I'd love to hear if y'all have any companies or brands or just maybe even groups. It doesn't have to be like a company, but it can be like a crew that you know of on the top of your head in your industry that is like, you think they're really doing something right. I'd rather highlight that than, you know, dig more into what can we do, because again, we probably have been asked that a million times. So yeah, if ever anyone wants to go first and highlight a company. I mean, Sasha, you're a company, you're a shop, you're doing it. So we can highlight Bliss Skate Shop at Bliss Skate Shop on Instagram. But yeah, Sasha, if you know of any other companies in skateboarding that you want to highlight that have been, you know, filling in those gaps, quote unquote, love to hear it.
Yeah, there's so many. And for me, what, like, I want to kind of touch on what Analise said when she was talking about just, you know, hitting the streets with other different groups who do that same activity. So she was talking about, you know, cycling with a group of other Black people. And to me, when I skate, you know, I go skate with the homies, and homies can be male or female, but for me, most of the time it's guys still. And that's fun. But when I'm skating with other females, it's a whole different vibe. It's a whole different vibe when you're skating with all females. And I was able to hit the streets in Toronto 2019 with a group of females. There's probably about maybe 16 or 18 of us. And we were just out street skating the streets of Toronto. And I'm sure we got tons of head turns. And so that was fun. But I think opening Bliss has actually helped me to see other women-led companies that have been doing awesome things. So even Girl Skate Barbados. And so, you know, that's a hub in Barbados that's helping to cater to girls who skate out there. Girls skate South Africa, skate like a girl, Black girls skate, which is really cool because they don't just highlight skateboarding, they highlight Black women who skateboard, who roller skate, who ice skate, which to me, I was like, what? We're on the ice? We're ice skating? Okay, yeah, and we're killing it too. So you know what I mean? Like, I just love the fact that there's all these other companies who are doing this. Babes Brigade in Toronto is also a women's hub who's catering towards young females who are skateboarding. The 100% Club, Fro Skate. There's so many groups that are out there, and I'm sure with other action sports, there's other action sports companies that are doing the same thing, or nonprofit organizations that are doing the same thing. So that's what I really love to see. And with Bliss, we're also trying to start we also have a nonprofit that we've started, and we're trying to get a lot of the younger youth into the community, getting it involved. And yeah, it's just pretty dope just to see the smaller nonprofits doing those things, and we should highlight that more. Obviously the bigger companies they've been doing good, I guess. I mean, I don't want to say great, because when you look at them, you haven't seen female representation. So I can't say that they've been doing great, because like Norma said, you look at, let's say, a Thrasher magazine or a Trans World magazine, and you're flipping through and you're trying to find representation for yourself, and you're like, well, there's no females in here. You might have seen maybe Vanessa Torres, you might have seen a couple other females, but you still don't see it. Pick up a Thrasher magazine right now. How many women are you going to find inside that Thrasher magazine that skateboard? You know what I mean? So the bigger companies, yes, they're doing stuff, but it's the smaller nonprofit organizations that are really hitting the nail on the head and actually going out there and putting the work into the community, whether it's skateboarding, skating, ice skating, snowboarding, whatever it is. There's smaller nonprofit organizations that are run by women that are trying to cater to us more. So that's what I like to see, and I want to shout out all those companies.
I want to throw out a Bliss Skate Shop challenge for all those skaters and non-skaters out there. Pick up a Thrasher, count how many, and DM at Bliss Skate Shop, and we'll see if we can even get, if you can get more than 3, then I'll shout you out on my personal. Yeah, anybody else want to shout out some? Kim?
Well, I definitely agree with 100% everything Sasha's saying. Like, more like grassroots organizations and individuals, like shout out to Brianna King, Unity, their skateboards, obviously Skate Like a Girl, like amazing organization. I will also say though, that like there are some companies that are on the, larger side, like they've been around for longer, that are making moves, and that's just not quite as front and center. And just having partnerships with different companies and seeing more of the inside, I do think that there is stuff happening. Like, for example, NHS, right, has Alex White as a brand manager for Crux, and also the first ever created role for her, which is women and non-binary rider relations for all the brands. Like, I don't see any other company really doing anything like that, and that was monumental. Obviously, there's a lot of gaps still, but I think steps like that, where they're giving a position of power, right? Like someone who can make decisions, like cut budgets, not just like, oh, we have a girl on our team, like check the box, and then like they don't listen to any of her ideas. I think there are companies making those moves. Deluxe, shout out to Jim Thiebaud, like Ashley Rayfeld is now, in charge of marketing, and she's a woman who skates. So there's some small movements for sure. I think there's a lot more work to be done, but it's happening. And even our partnership, like Skate Like Girls, one of our main sponsors is Nike SB. And over the years, they really have shown us that they're invested. And it's not just like, here's some shoes, good luck, like put our logo on everything. Like there's still some stuff that is not actually public yet, but I'm super excited about what we're working on in the coming year, because they've actually been able to like prove to us through their actions, not just words, that like they want us to continue doing what we're doing, and they're going to do everything they can to make that happen, right? So I think that in the next few years, hopefully we'll see more of that, and definitely encourage brands to continue putting, women in positions of power for sure.
Awesome. Analise, Aisha, any
Yeah.
brands or companies in your guys' world besides yourself
I think I would be a terrible ambassador and athlete if I did not shout out my main partner, Liv Cycling, which is an all-women cycling brand, run by and for women, which is really amazing. And I think the cycling industry, like I said when I got here, they were having a big push for more women's inclusivity and creating things for women and making a space for women. And I think the cycling industry is doing a better job of that these days. I think I'm a really tough critic, so I have a really hard time giving more credit than I ever think is deserved, because I always want more, I always want better, and I think women deserve more and women deserve better. But I do think that there are a few companies out there that are doing it, and there have been quite a few women who started companies in the cycling industry, and so they are just innately women focused and women led because of that. And yeah, I mean, as far as Black women are concerned, which is usually my focus, and women of color, I feel like I don't know that there's any one company that's doing a particularly great job. I think a lot of companies are trying, especially after this summer. I think it was a really big eye-opening moment for a lot of individuals and organizations and companies where they've finally could see the gaps and the lack thereof when it came to racial diversity and representation in their brand and marketing and just in general for the company. But I think efforts are starting to be made, and the fruits of that are yet to be seen, but things are happening. And so that feels really positive. But I think similar to what y'all were saying about the skate industry, I think a lot of the biggest motion has been happening in grassroots and nonprofits and individuals. And especially with the boom of social media and Instagram, that really gave voice to a lot of people to make bigger waves and access a much bigger audience. And I think even more importantly, for those of us who were doing this kind of work kind of in silos, to find each other and be able to build community and work together, which has been absolutely amazing. I think a lot of really great partnerships have been made because of social media and just people being able to reach each other and come up with what used to seem like crazy ideas and just do things because they were like, man, I want to do this thing. Oh, I want to do this thing too. Okay, let's just do it. And then it happens. And so that's been really beautiful to see. So as far as big companies, I guess in summary, I think some companies are doing better. And some companies are just innately doing a good job supporting women because that's how they were designed to begin with. But I think the biggest motion has been happening in grassroots and not-for-profits and individuals.
Yeah, Annalise, anyone you want to shout out, any companies that have been, actively filling those gaps in?
Yeah, before a company, I definitely want to shout out the Black Foxes for, being a collective and representing themselves and, really taking up that space. That's pretty dope. And I love to see all the different personalities and stuff y'all create. As far as companies, I want to shout out more groups like that, because here in Miami, there's a group called Breaking the Cycle, and they have an event every day of the week, and it's for all different levels. And I think that's really important. I definitely felt intimidated when I started biking, just because it was, I don't know, everything was so epic. And I was just like, ooh, what if I don't want to start there? What if I need a little bit more time? And so this group, they have happy hour ride on Friday and a ride on Sunday, and then they have speed nights for the people who are training. And then there's another group, Level Up Cycling Movement, and they're more geared towards pros and racing and go really ham and are really disciplined. And I just love to see all of it. And for corporate, I will say that it's starting. In Velocio, I feel like I spent some time learning the brand and, really digesting so that I could represent as intended. And now I am stepping into a space where I have more agency and get to bring in my people into the space as well, and see what I can make happen. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's the right answer. There is no wrong answer. You don't have to say big company yet, but the yet is a good way to end that sentence too, because hopefully, you know, with everything going on and all the work that we're all collectively doing, then those companies will, you know, in the way that they can step up is to step back. That's something we love at Skate Like Girl, is in creating space for people and holding space for people. Sometimes you stepping up as a person or a company is stepping back. And so I think slowly we'll see that. And hopefully with all the resources that these companies have, it won't be that slow, right? So, but shout out to the people that are doing the work, and that's all of us and everyone that we just shouted out, and many more that we haven't heard from yet. Okay, so we do have a really rad question from our YouTube chat. What up, YouTube? So this is a question for everybody, and I think it's very important, and I love it. With a number of projects and organizations that all of you are involved with, how do you navigate in mental and emotional burnout, especially amidst a global crisis and a long overdue social justice movement? So hitting all the feels there. So yeah, if anyone wants to answer that first. So how are all y'all busy people kind of navigating mental and emotional burnout?
I'll jump on and kind of answer that. Yeah, that is a very actual thing that can happen. and you want to be careful of that, because then you really just drain yourself out, and you can get really stressed out about things. So I'm a very busy person all the time. Like, I've been up since 6 o'clock this morning. I have a full-time job. I'm supposed to finish at 4. I finished at 6:30. Like, and then I came here and I still have more stuff to do. So how do I not burn out with all this stuff going on? I do something that is fun to me. Whether sometimes it's being at the skate shop, because I don't feel like I'm working when I'm here. And so that's like a relaxation thing for me, especially when I have a customer in here. Like, I don't feel like I'm just hanging out. I'm hanging out, just talking to people. And if I'm not doing that, then I'll try to meditate. And a lot of people, when you say meditate, they're thinking about, oh, you're crossing your legs and you're in this position. No, you can meditate by going for a walk. I always like to drive by the water, by the riverfront. You can meditate while you're in the shower. There's all kinds of stuff to do. And then another thing I love to do is skate. I love to go skateboarding. So I think some type of hobby where you're kind of escaping, but you're still in your own world, is something that can be beneficial to help you not have that overwhelmingness of just, go and doing stuff all the time, because you really have to take that time to give for self-care. So either if I'm doing something fun, like I said, where I'm here at the shop, but I like I said, I don't feel like I'm working, meditation, or I go and skate. And like I said before, skateboarding is a you versus you sport. So when you're doing it, it's just, you put your headphones on and you go do whatever you have to do. So that's how I deal with it. Not having to do with the mental breakdown. That's my way of fixing it.
I have learned to say no. And that was a really hard thing to learn how to do. And I've been saying no a lot more lately, because burnout is very real. And like, if you burn out, you're not of use to anyone, not yourself, not your friends, your family, the movement, whatever it is you're trying to do. If you're burnt out, you can't do none of that. So I think, like, similar to Sasha, I like to find like alternative things that I enjoy that don't feel like work, and do those things as well. But like, I also find that like doing that sometimes means I'm piling even more on my plate. And so like the biggest thing that I have learned is like saying no, especially if it's like something I don't want to do, because I feel like sometimes we feel like, oh, well, if I don't do it, nobody else will, or this has to get done, so it's on me. And it's not. Like, sometimes you just gotta say no.
For me, well, I think something that I've been really trying to advocate for in the last year or two, and something that I'm constantly doing now, and it's helping me a lot, is therapy. I think a lot of us are kind of very uncomfortable sometimes I was to talk about, you know, it's okay to go to therapy because you're working on yourself to improve. And we have things to work on. We have baggage, we have old traumas, even sometimes we have generational traumas that have passed to us. So like going to therapy has been something that really has helped. Also, like Sasha said, meditation. Like I'm a hyper person. I'm always trying to be busy, just always looking for new projects. And I thought that I was not good at meditating because I pictured myself, like Sasha said, like, oh, like, you know, being in this zone. But I learned that you can meditate by just focusing on your breathing, and that's really such a good exercise, because a lot of the times we're not, you know, we're like go, and we don't take a deep breath. And breathing helps for a lot of things. So like taking time for yourself, therapy, meditation, and yeah, like mindfulness, and yeah, like I think those are the things that. Oh, and the other thing that I've been doing starting this year, it's a social media cleanse. So like I also do social media for livings. I run a couple of social media accounts, so I find that social media can be very distractful, it can get really stressful if you're like, you know, your mind is going in so many directions. So like I'm doing a day off social media, like my phone is turned off for one entire day, and that's really helping. So those are the things that I have been doing, and it seemed to be working.
I don't know if we're trying to wrap up here. I think we are, but I'll just quickly say, yes, I deactivated my Facebook account and it was the best thing ever. I'm still on Instagram a ton, but just eliminating one platform. And two, I'll just say structure. Like when I was younger, like in college and after college, like I'd go to bed at like 3 randomly and then like wake up early another day to go snowboarding or whatever. And I think that honestly, like as I've gotten older, I really value the routine and the structure. And if it's something that you can just work at and try to make happen, I know it's not easy, like going to bed at the same time, getting the same amount of hours of sleep every night. It really does make a difference. Like it has for me, for my mental health. And part of like, I used to have trouble sleeping because I had like so many projects and my mind was going a zillion, you know, miles per minute. And part of that is just like when I'm physically tired, then I can sleep better. So if that means going out for a run, riding my bike, like going out to skate, like doing something, even if it's just a mellow walk, like just moving my body. So I just wanted to say structure and routine and just how important that is for me.
Awesome, y'all. Analise, anything, one more piece of advice for everyone, since y'all are all busy people?
Yeah, I'll just quickly say a family, or checking into who you have, and sharing those vulnerable moments to remind yourself you're a human and not a robot, and slow it down. And since I moved home, obviously that is like a big difference for me. So
awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Norma, Kim, Sasha, Analise, Aisha, you guys are amazing. And I believe that all y'all's Instagram handles have been dropped in the chat so everyone can bug you even more. Just kidding, no. To follow your guys' journey and all the changes y'all are making. So thank you so much. And I can't wait to keep in touch with y'all soon. And I'm going to pass it on to Natalie to wrap up our panel.
Awesome. Thank you, Sima. Thank you so much, ladies. That was amazing. I want to thank everyone watching. We will have this recording available on our YouTube page, so you can come back and revisit or share with those of you who may have missed it. We're really excited, and we're just really thankful that we were able to put this on tonight. And yeah, with that, I will say, I remember Black History Month never stops. All this, we got to keep fighting the good fight. There's not just a month or a day, it's every day. So thank you, panelists, and thank you, everyone. And we will see you again next year for sure, and probably sooner.